Right. Welcome to the Arborist Call for the 13th of December. This is our last Arborist Call of the year. We will start off with core team updates, and then we'll get research and implementation updates from the various teams. And then if anybody has any announcements that they want to make or any topics that they want to propose during our open discussion time, be ready to stick your hand up. So what are Arborist calls? These are bi-weekly calls that alternate between an earlier time slot of 3 p.m. UTC and a later time slot of 9 p.m. UTC for contributors to the Zcash protocol to come together to discuss things like timelines, give updates on the work that they're doing, and to generally coordinate and make sure that there are no blockers preventing further progress on making Zcash even better. The goal of having these meetings in public, open to anybody, and recorded and uploaded to YouTube is to make the process of Zcash protocol development more accessible to the Zcash community. Anybody can join these calls. You just need to register by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. And if you want to present a topic on one of these calls, drop us an email at arboristcall@zfnd.org, and we will have a chat with you and potentially allocate you a presentation slot. Other ways you can get involved in Zcash are to apply for a grant from the Zcash Community Grants Program. You can also join the R&D Discord, which is where a lot of the engineers who are working on various aspects of Zcash come together to discuss things. And you can always also join the discussions on the always hot and spicy Zcash community forums. And you can find all of these links, again, by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. Right, let's start off with the core team updates. And up first, we have the Zcash Foundation. I think it's Marek today, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So earlier this week, we released Zebra 1.5. It contains a bunch of networking improvements and fixes. Some of them were reported by the Ziggurat team, so thanks for those. And the main addition is that we introduced support for shielded scanning. The way it works now is that you add your sapling viewing key to Zebra's config file, or like multiple of them. Zebra picks them up, scans the blockchain, and stores the results in its persistent storage. And the results contain TX IDs and their associated keys, and we have a tool that prints the memos of these transactions. So if you want to try it, the way it works there is that you can scan the blockchain with Zebra and then run the tool that picks the TX IDs, then fetches the transactions from Zebra and prints all the memos, for example, from Zec pages. So you'll get the Zec pages posts, and that's all.
Chris?
So I've just a sort of an implementation question about separation of concerns. So one of the things that caused us much pain and difficulty over the years was the Zcashd full node wallet being tightly coupled to Zcashd, and it would have, we really wish that there were a abstraction and process boundary between the two. So what in terms of what you're implementing, how is the wallet isolated from the rest of ZebraD, and what is the communication protocol between the two?
So I'll answer that. There is no wallet. what Mark just described relates to viewing keys only.
Okay, but that, I mean, it's still integrated functionality versus, you know, so a wallet can be, or there can be a pruned or diminished version of a wallet, which is a you know, an input scanner essentially. And in fact, I've made, you know, in Zcash client backend, we've for long had the idea that that a wallet is only one of the possible applications, but a you know, a client like a merchant point of sale terminal where you only want to use incoming viewing keys and not full viewing keys is a valid application. And you know, for any of those such application, though, I think that that sort of isolation would be valuable.
Mark, I don't know if you want to talk about how it's been implemented.
Yeah, so we thought about this as well, and for the MVP, which we are almost finished by now with, we decided to just go with what I just described, and that's adding the viewing key to Zebra's config. The release notes contain a warning about this, that this is not like secure for now, and we are definitely open to suggestions and improvements as regards the separation there. We also considered having the keys in a separate process from ZebraD. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I think that it would be fruitful to move forward, you know, I understand that for an MVP you just want to get something out there, but I think that for the long game, it would be ideal for such applications to be, you know, separate processes that speak over either the light client protocol or you know, an evolved version of the light client protocol to full nodes, so that the distinction between such an application and a you know, so that such an application could, you know, run remotely from the full node, or that, you know, that separation, you know, in Zcash's history, there were significant vulnerabilities that took a lot of effort to mitigate due to the communication channel between ZcashD and its wallet being synchronous. And I just, you know, just trying to warn away from the integrated path of development. And I know very well how easy it is to put prototypes into production. We discussed yesterday at the NU5 retrospective just how much pain we at ECC suffered from having put prototypes into production and then come to regret our choices. So that's all.
Direct response to that. Yeah, so that issue with privacy leaks, if you have asynchronous communication between the scanning and the rest of the node, that applies even to viewing keys. So you ideally don't want to leak that you're scanning using a particular key, but already just with a viewing key, you potentially have a timing leak, depending on exactly how it's implemented.
Conrado.
Yeah, so I'm wondering what do you think would be like an ideal solution to this? Because if it's in another process, you basically have to stream the entire blockchain to another process, which seems very expensive, or not. Maybe just not viewing the right solution for this. But do you think it's worth doing this? For this
Well,
particular, I agree that the whole wallet the main part of the wallet should be another process, but this particular thing, the blockchain scanning, do you think it should even considering this should be another process?
I mean, I think so. I think that you know, the light client protocol and the compact block protocol is intended to, you know, pass as little information across as is necessary for you know, to make that feasible. I think that yeah, I think that if we need to evolve the light client protocol to make it more performant, that will ultimately be, you know, beneficial to the entire ecosystem. Whereas having, I think that starting with embedded scanning into ZBRD is, and especially with the tendency of prototypes to become production, it's likely that that functionality will want to be extended to full node wallets down the road, and then you will end up in the same position as we're in Zcash where we really wish that the wallet were not part of Zcash at all, because it's really easy to get tight coupling. So just food for thought going forward. You know, I think that common work on light client backends and improving the light wallet protocol benefit the entire ecosystem. You know, perhaps at the cost of sort of individual user scanning. The other thing, though, is that I think that there are important, you know, full node wallets where you have an integrated viewing key. There's much more limited application for those than there is for you know, disconnected light clients. Now, maybe it's the intent that, well, okay, I'm running my own full node and then I'm connecting to it from elsewhere or something like that. But yeah, I think that it should be, you know, just considered what the costs of that tight coupling will be in the long term.
Conrad, is your hand? Oh, Gilly, you next.
Me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you, Chris, for, yeah, we have been thinking about, you know, we definitely don't intend for this MVP to make it anywhere into production, and we were just trying to see, okay, let's get familiar with the library, let's see what we can achieve. And so right now we've only been scanning sec pages, which I guess Mark probably said. In terms of security issues and timing attacks and things like that, we have been doing some analysis, and we do have some issues open to, for example, running the task in its own Tokyo executor to prevent timing attacks and other things. And we're also very at peace with the idea of, you know, if we need to scrap all this work and do it properly from the start, that's fine. You know, we've been learning lessons from this MVP, and we'll take those going forward. But yeah, we welcome all this feedback. This is great. And if you have any other ideas on other security concerns that we should have, please send them on.
Strat.
I just wanted to push back semi-strongly against what Chris was saying, as he knows I will. I agree with the conclusion that not requiring a wallet to be tightly coupled within a single node's full process and like integrated the way it is in Zcash is good. I do not believe that we should be instead coupling it to the light client protocol. And there might be a difference in semantics here in terms of what an evolution of the light client protocol is thought to mean. But there are significant costs imposed on wallets that use the light client protocol, in part because of the way that compact blocks are required to consider bandwidth. And if you are in a context with a full node where you have access to the whole chain in some persistent database, in particular, Zebra has, because Zebra uses RocksDB as a persistent and immutable database, I would imagine that actually opens up some interesting possibilities for having the wallet and scanning and keys in a separate process, but still sharing the same on-disk structures. So the protocol between them could be passing block references, for instance, or references in that way, but referring to the same immutable on-disk data, which gives you significant performance improvements compared to having to parse into an in-memory synthetic light client protocol, and B, you gain a lot of the you can do a lot of additional, or you can rely on a bunch of checks that the full node is doing for you that you in theory are meant to be doing yourself for light client, and B, potentially, depending on where the security boundary gets drawn, in the case that Chris alluded to, for like having your wallet on your phone connecting to a full node that you run remotely, you could potentially have parts of that scanning happening on the same computer as your full node, and then parts of the wallet behavior happening on your phone where you are. So, which would give you sort of the best of all worlds, where you would have like process separated scanning happening on a more powerful machine than your local phone, and then communicating with your local phone over your direct connection, for instance.
Yeah. So this comes down to actually I think a really important point, which is it would be really useful to define the use cases that this scanning capability integrated with the full node is intended to solve, and who the intended users are, and what proportion of the network they represent. One of the reasons that I'm pushing back a little bit is that my perception, at least, is that for something like a full node that is online all the time, an adjacent light client wallet that's connected, there are certainly sort of startup costs where if you're in mobile wallet parlance, if you're recovering and wanting to scan the chain historically, then there are certainly costs that are associated there. But if it's more of a thing where you have a steady state, then I don't think that the costs of that you're talking about that are associated with the light client protocol are significant or relevant.
The costs are not just performance costs; they are security costs.
Yeah,
right.
That's my point. Is that you're making. Anyway,
folks, we're going down rabbit holes here. We're going very, very deep down rabbit holes. So I'm going to call on Marek, I'm going to call on Dara, and then we're going to move on. And if we want to come back to this topic at the end of the call, you're absolutely more than welcome to. This is intended to be the core team updates portion of the call. So, Marek.
Well, I just wanted to add that one of the reasons why we built the MVP is to have these discussions, and if there are any potential consumers of the future API, like users of the scanning, you're also welcome to contribute to the discussions and help us how we are gonna design the APIs and how it's gonna work. We can sort of adjust it for various needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, I couldn't find the tickets on analysis of side channels on Zcash Foundation Zebra. So if you can post links for those, that would be helpful. I don't think that the cost of streaming full blocks to another process on the same machine is actually very great relative to compact blocks. So I think that isn't really that shouldn't be a determining a design consideration. And yeah, so the only other thing I want to say is that the important thing is that whatever protocol is used is carefully analyzed. We shouldn't be deciding on architectures in a few minutes.
It looks like Felia's posted tickets to the chat.
Thank you.
So as both Mark and Pili alluded to, this is a prototype. It's based on an assumption that the ability to scan more transactions associated with a particular viewing key will be of use in use cases such as, for example, exchanges, in a way that improves upon having the tightly coupled wallet that we currently have in Zcash D. So what we're aiming here really is for progress, not perfection. And we will continue to iterate and improve towards hopefully use cases where this will get picked up and used. But yeah, we absolutely, there have been internal discussions about whether we should even store this information, and I decided that we should for the time being, because we can always choose not to store it in the future, hold in memory, and then be able to delete it and whatnot, or run it in separate processes or whatever. So, but I mean, I think the discussion about how to improve the light client protocol is an important one. I'm not sure if is Paku on today. So, but yeah, we're not trying to solve every problem that Zcash has right now. We're just trying to build some functionality into Zebra that we think is likely to be useful to certain use cases going forward. Okay. Next up, who's in the hot seat for ECC?
I think that's me today. Okay, so significant updates since last time is that we have more or less completed the extraction of the sapling crypto crate from Libra Zcash. So that the GitHub Zcash sapling crypto repository now has the updated version of all of the sapling code. That's been extracted from Zcash primitives, and it's been restructured to follow the model that we developed for Orchard. And we've not yet cut a release of the sapling crypto crate. There are a few other changes that we're considering getting in before cutting a release, but that, kudos to Strad, that major refactor is done. This will allow us to do a couple of interesting things. One is that for Brave's use case of Zcash client backend, we may need to feature flag off sapling capabilities. And so this isolation both helps with decoupling the sapling functionality from everything else. We discovered a bunch of points of coupling that we had along the way and have fixed those. So that's really nice. The other pieces that we're working on that are significant are adding Orchard support to the Zcash client backend. That's also progressing relatively rapidly. And that's it as far as Zcash D and the wallet SDK. Oh, there's also been a bunch of CI work going on for Zcash D, but that's less, less relevant to the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah. The other bit that is relevant to the ecosystem for that is we will probably be cutting a new release of Zcash D probably early next week, so that there's another release out ahead of 5.7.0 reaching EOS in mid-January. But there's not much that's happened in Zcash D itself. It may include the updates to the sapling crypto Rust crates if they're in time, but if we have that release out in time, but otherwise it will mostly just be a bumping the EOS height.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I was under the impression that we were deciding collectively to move to Zebra as like the focus for development. So does Zcash D work? Is that kind of like catching up until or like fixing ongoing stuff until we move to Zebra, or is there like new big things that Zcash?
No, I can answer that. So right now, the majority of the network runs on Zcash D, and Zcash D will automatically shut down every 16 weeks after each release, to allow us to get old versions of Zcash D off the network. And so we have to usually about every 6 weeks.
Ideally, every 6 weeks. It's been stretching out more as we've been doing less directly on Zcash D.
Yeah, but we need to have replacement nodes available so that when existing nodes halt at their end of service, that users have upgraded so that it doesn't impact the functioning of the network. This also is one of those things where, do frequently the things that need to be done. If our partners are all used to updating Zcash D regularly, and ZebraD is also, to my knowledge, included an end of service halt similarly, so that it's been incredibly important for being able to evolve the network to get old nodes to shut down.
Yep. But to clarify, the majority of what was described in this update was changes to the Rust crates that are used by Zcash D, by the wallet SDKs, and by ZebraD.
Yeah, I was going to say it's important to continue making Zcash D depend on the most recent versions of the Rust code, partly because that helps to test the Rust code.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's probably also worth mentioning that the process of sunsetting Zcash D it's not going to happen overnight, or even though over the course of a couple of months. It's kind of akin to moving the world off fossil fuels. There's a lot that needs to happen before we can stop, pumping oil and having cars run on petrol or gas.
Yeah, and the Zebra wallet work or scanning work is definitely an important step in that direction, because the Zcash D wallet does feature importantly in the current ecosystem, and we would very much like it not to.
Yeah, and just to put that in context, our work in Zebra is not intended to build a Zebra wallet. It is intended to provide functionality in Zebra that will support external clients, including wallets that will be entirely separate from Zebra, and to perform functionality that those clients will find useful and ideally improve the overall user experience of Zcash in the longer term. Nate.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out is ECC has the intention to wind down our support of Zcash D over an appropriate amount of time, but we're also planning to try to organize a task force to help us review all of the stuff that we're maintaining, to see if there are pieces that other people are interested in helping with, or potentially taking over maintainership of. And Zcash D could be one of those pieces. So if there were any teams that wanted to continue maintaining it, it might persist. It's just that we plan to transition our future work to Zebra moving forward. So just wanted to point that out. The ecosystem could go either way depending on who else shows up.
Yeah, they're open. So I think that it's actually on me to really initiate the call for participation for that task force, and I have not gotten to it yet because of everything else that's been going on. But the important questions that we'll want to answer in that task force are timely, in that we have to decide what's happening with the network for NU6 and whether there will be, you know, how we can transition enough of the network to ZebraD for NU6, or what the scope of NU6 is, in terms of, you know, what needs to be developed and how do we actually get the network to shift. So lots to work on there, and I will attempt to get the call for participation out as soon as I can.
Yeah. My kind of assumption stroke expectation is that just as Zebra is adding functionality, like adding the ability to support a light wallet, adding the ability to generate block templates, as more functionality becomes available that doesn't rely on Zcash, it seems reasonable that over time that functionality in Zcash would become unsupported, and it obviously depends on whether there are use cases which would rely on two sets of functionality, within a single node. For example, if we go to miners today and we'd say, hey, you should switch from using Zcash to using Zebra for generating your block templates, that's something they can absolutely do. But I would imagine that most miners also use Zcash for managing their block rewards and doing payouts and whatnot. So the two pieces of functionality, which fortunately in that particular case can be separated, they can run two separate pieces of software, or they could run a light client to receive their payouts. But there may be other pieces of distinct functionality that the user needs to or would prefer to reside in a single node, and that will, we'll have to deal with those as and when they come. But yeah, I think over time the goal, the overarching goal, is for Zebra to address more use cases and thereby allow Zcash to say, right, we no longer support this use case, so this will not be upgraded, or it'll be sunset until finally perhaps Zcash could, if nobody else decides to continue to maintain it, which also is my expectation, then its functionality will shrink down until eventually the vast majority of the network has transitioned across to
yeah.
to
I mean, let me take a different view on that, though, which is that there's a halving coming in a bit less than a year. In order to meet the network needs of that halving, full nodes supporting the halving have to be deployed by, let's say, at the latest July of this coming year. And there needs to, if we don't want a chain fork at the halving, then both Zcash, if it were to continue to exist, and ZebraD would have to implement the same consensus rules. And so if there is not a party that is planning to implement, let's call it NU6 consensus rules in Zcash, then there is some urgency to not just do this, gradual process, but to actually shift the network rather rapidly to using ZebraD exclusively, because otherwise we'll get to the halving and there just won't be a good set of consensus rules that is uniformly distributed across the network.
Agreed.
The problem is, though, if we don't get enough enough of the critical use cases supported in Zebra by that time, then does that then place a block on being able to do, when able to have it?
I mean, I think that at that point, what happens is that NU6 just doesn't happen if we haven't upgraded the network. So So yes, it's very important for I think ZebraD to achieve the ability to take over the whole network in the next 5 to 6 months.
It's the first time I'm hearing a concrete deadline on NU6 by anyone.
I mean, if the dev fund is intended to continue, then yeah.
Nate.
Yeah, sorry, I can't tell if my hand keeps raising and unraising. It looks like it on my phone, but yeah. So it's certainly timely to begin discussing network upgrades, and we should get focused on that outside of core team update for Zcash, but clearly there's a lot of related moving parts that we should be discussing as a group. So I'm hoping we can do that soon, especially as we sort of wrap up the NU5 retro, which I'm not sure when the next iteration is planned, but I hope you all can drop into that and participate. Just a comment on what Chris was saying. I personally would be an advocate for maybe separating out if there's a dev fund thing. I'm assuming or presuming that the technical changes for that might be relatively modest. So it might make sense for us to separate out 2 different updates to alleviate some of that timing pressure. But again, I think we need to really discuss all these options as a group moving into the new year.
So the technical change that would be required for a continued dev fund is just to add a funding stream. And both Zcash and Zebra already support funding streams as a general mechanism. So it's a code change, but it's a relatively straightforward code change that doesn't even, in principle, need so the technical expertise of the Zebra and Zcash engineers. Pretty much anyone could do it.
Okay, any more questions or comments for the ECC team? Okay, let's move on to research implementation updates, and let's start off with trailing finality.
I can provide an update. So the last big milestone was sort of publishing what we call V0.1.0 of the book. And that sort of was coordinated with completing the sort of the first pass on the core consensus construction, which is called crosslink. So now what we're doing is we're working on sort of 3 different tasks. The first is just to transition all the crosslink writing, which is on HackMD, over into the book so that there's just one comprehensive document. The second is we're creating a simulator which we can use to sort of model consensus rules in a simplified manner that just focuses on what's important, and that can model different kinds of attacks or edge cases. So that's coming along. It is, I think the status is that it's able to simulate BFT protocol to some degree.
I can speak to that. So,
and then the third
yeah.
Okay. I was just gonna. Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about the simulator. So I've just finished implementing Streamlit, which is it's kind of a pedagogical BFT protocol. It's as simple as possible, and it works. And in fact, the tests are detecting safety violations. So one of the things that we've considered doing is so recording in the chain whenever a BFT safety violation occurs, so that everyone gets a proof that it happened. And yep, so making good progress on that.
yeah, the third sort of track is that we have started, we've just barely started with this idea of just creating a prototype that mashes together Zebra and Comet BFT. Comet BFT is the new name for what used to be called Tendermint because there was an IP forking issue. And so our current thinking for that prototype effort is we don't even know if that will fit the actual design we're working on, which we need to figure out down the road, but we just want to get familiar with how do we modify Zebra in this way to make some sort of hybrid protocol, just so we get that started really early. And we're hoping to have kind of a milestone for all three of those things ready by the end of January. And I think at that point, it might be a good idea, like maybe in early February, for us to give like a more in-depth presentation at Arborist Call so that we can get wider review of trailing finality layer design and feedback and analysis. Does that seem good to you, Dara, like that timeline for us to give a presentation?
Sorry, repeat the timeline.
Early February. I'm putting
Yes.
her on the spot. I was saying probably in early February would be a good time for us to give like a more in-depth presentation to Arborist about Crosslink to get wider review and questions.
Yeah. So there's a technical question that might be interesting to discuss, which is whether you have basically a separate network of BFT proposers and validators, or whether it's actually currently miners, while the protocol is still in the hybrid mode, that are also proposing BFT blocks. And I just posted a hang on, there we go. I posted a link into the chat. The discussion of that option is at the end of that document. So the question then is, what are the trade-offs for sort of trust reliance? Because while the protocol is still in the hybrid mode, you're relying on miners anyway. So you can essentially not get any extra security by relying on some additional parties to propose BFT blocks. So that's worth considering.
Oh, one final bit about scope and context sort of for that February presentation goal. So Crosslink is a construction that sort of treats proof of work and proof of stake mostly as black boxes, although there is some requirements it imposes on them. It modifies them to some degree, but it is agnostic as to many of the proof of stake features that are going to be really important, such as how does staking work? Can you delegate? How many validators are there? What's the yield? All of those questions are still not resolved at all at this part of the design, just so people understand the scope. So this is more focused on just the core consensus mechanism.
Yeah, so if people have opinions about those things, where should they post them?
I think a good,
cool.
There's two spots. So there's the forum thread, and I think people have already been posting opinions there. If it's more, the other option is to go to the TFL book GitHub and file tickets. Either could work, whatever people are comfortable with, I think.
Yep. Or if you're on the R&D Discord, there's a proof of stake channel there.
Yep. All right, so I think that's it for trailing finality.
Any more questions or comments for Nate? Okie doke. Let's move on to the Sustainability Fund.
So I can give an update. So zip-wise, we have submitted a couple of small pull requests. One that updates the zip 230, which is about the transaction version 6 format. So we are adding the ZSF deposit field there, and there's a small pull request that we have published as well that updates zip 244, which is about transaction IDs. So we want to update the zip 244 to include ZSF deposit and transaction IDs and signature digests. And then there is a. You have a comment there?
Yes. So zip 244 currently describes the signature digests for transaction version 5. Obviously, you can't change how those digests are calculated for version 5 without causing a compatibility break. So there will be an equivalent of zip 244 for version 6, and that's probably where that change should be made. But yeah, the zip editors will have to sort that out.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure about that, so thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, depending on the kind of change that's necessary, it might be possible to specify
maybe
a way that
yeah,
is backwards compatible. But yeah, if you've written up the chain, like the delta that is necessary, that will make it easier to determine whether it's possible to massage it into a form where, like,
yeah, let me just
into
have a look
V5,
at
just ignore it and still get the same thing.
Yeah, this is zip 748. So let me just very quickly have a look at it. Right, so the way that change is currently described would break compatibility, but that's okay. It at least shows what's needed. So yeah.
Just to clarify, zip 244, at least in its title, doesn't mention transaction 5 specifically. So I'm not sure, like, does it change things or not?
So if you look at zip 225, that's what references zip 244, I think. So yeah, it's indirectly. Well, I'll check it. You should carry on.
Yeah. Zip 244 does reference V5 in a couple of places, but it does so in spots where the algorithm being described is used on both V4 and V5 transactions. The reason it doesn't mention it in other places is because in those other places, like for the transaction digest, their transaction digest currently is only used for V5, so it's sort of implicit.
Yeah.
So if we update it in a way to be V5, V6, then those distinctions of for V5 do this way, for V6 do this way will need to be introduced.
Yeah, so if you look at zip 225, which is the version 5 transaction format, it says that it depends on and defines modifications to the commitments defined by zip 244. So yeah, I'd actually slightly misremembered that, but yeah, the dependency is there.
Okay, so so either there will be a new zip or this one will be, I guess, kind of updated with and made it so that V6 handles it as well, or?
I imagine that there'll be a zip 226, maybe.
I think 226 is already
Oh,
used.
sorry to say.
But
So
yeah,
zip
but
230.
there will be a new zip.
Oh yeah, 230. Yeah, 230 is reserved for version 6.
So 230 will reference a new zip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So that's that. And the other thing we did is we have updated our third zip, third ZSF zip, which is the one about 60-40 transaction split. The one thing missing from there was an estimation of the impact that implementing this transaction fee split would have on miners. So I wrote a simple tool that estimates transaction fees based on past 100,000 blocks, starting from a couple of days ago, and I implemented kind of a simplified zip 317 model to estimate how much what would be the transaction fees under that regime, and I estimated that implementing the 60-40 split will result in around 800 coins being sent to ZSF, so taken from miners to ZSF, which is in dollar value is around $24,000. That's per year. As I mentioned, I did a little bit of a simplification of the zip 317 because there is a dependency in there on the serialized length of transaction inputs and outputs, which my tool being written in a scripted language, I didn't have access to that because I have to, I guess, set up some bindings to the C++ code or find out some way of calculating exactly what would be the serialized length of those transaction inputs and outputs. But I assumed that the typical length would be 150, which is what is mentioned in the zip 317. So shouldn't impact
roughly.
my estimation, I hope.
Probably not.
Nate.
Yes, I was curious for the for that estimation, why you need. So it sounds like you're modeling zip 317. Another kind of estimation, I guess I can see the difference because another kind would be to just look at aid in the past 100,000 blocks and then multiply that by 60%. That doesn't anticipate everything transitioning to zip 317. Is that the reason you're trying to model zip 317?
Yes, I was specifically asked to by one of the editors. I don't remember who exactly now, but yeah,
okay.
Somebody asked for it specifically.
Yeah, I guess zip 317 should make a really big difference, at least for larger transactions. I'm actually curious now about how big that difference might be.
Oh,
well,
I actually
by the time this is deployed, zip 317 will be fully in effect. So that's like why the editors, I think, asked for that. I can't remember who it was, so I might have been one.
But I think my estimation tool, if I remember correctly, I'd have to check again, but I think the average transaction fee would raise by I think 90 times, something like that, 90 to 100. I think that was my estimation. Yeah.
So okay. Another thing is that if we're using recent blocks, that includes the spam, and presumably if zip 317 accomplishes what we hope, then that will go away. So I would guess that would be an overestimate of how much would be deposited in CSF.
Yeah, I think the intent was to filter out the spam transactions before calculating that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I don't know whether that's been done in that estimate. Has it?
That has not been done.
Okay.
So
maybe we weren't clear about that.
And is the estimate code like mentioned on the PR or otherwise available?
I've added a reference to it in the zip. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and one more thing, I am currently, because we have started actually some implementation work on this for Zebra for now, for the entirety of the ZSF. And I've started working on top of a pull request that is already submitted to the Zebra repository. There's a pull request by Paul, I believe, who's working on Zcash shielded assets. And he has already created some, he's written some transaction version 6 code. which we obviously need as well. And just wanted to mention that I'm working on top of that pull request, which luckily it seems to be in a decent shape. But obviously there's no reason for me to duplicate the work and create conflicts and so on. So I'm working on top of that, and for now it hasn't been an issue. But just to let I guess everybody know that I depend on it. So I don't know if there's if it's possible, it would be in my best interest for that pull request to get merged quickly and you know, not change too much.
I'll transmit the message on the
Thank you.
not change too much, but the merging is not in our hands.
Or maybe in some way we could extract the part that is common to both of our efforts. So just the introduction of the transaction version 6, because that's something I need. And I know there is some serialization code. I saw that there's some serialization code already written, but it's missing the deserialization code. So obviously I want to, you know, I need the deserialization part as well. So we need to figure out who will actually write that.
We redirected some of the, like we changed the content of part of our deliverables to support this regardless of ZSA. So if you have actual needs, like the one you're saying, talk to us and we'll figure it out, is actually like budgeted because we understood that we're doing here something that's wider than just ZSA, and so talk to us.
Okay, thank you.
Dara.
Yeah, so can I ask an awkward question? If this is, did you say $20-something thousand a year at
Yes.
current prices? Is this worth doing at all? Is that too little to make any significant difference to anything?
Not sure if that's a question to me. I mean,
okay, it's a rhetorical question to the community.
Okay.
I have an opinion, but
please.
So yeah, my opinion would be that this is so. This change can be impactful if aggregate fees go up in the future, and I think that it would be generally good for Zcash if we can find a way for aggregate fees to go up, because that means there's demand to use the network. But also I would like to be able to keep typical fees low. So that implies scalability and it implies use cases with lots of adoption. I think those are good goals. The other piece is that the ZSF is like a mechanism we could use for any other new types of fees or anything else where there's something in the protocol that generates a stream of coins and there's a question about what to do with them or where to transfer them. One option would be as ZSF. So that could come into play with ZSAs or like maybe some bridging things or maybe proof of stake or DeFi, basically any of those sort of mechanisms where there could be some sort of on-chain fees. ZSF would be in place as an option, and using that option is a way to handle a particular case of like mechanism design where sometimes you want to impose a cost on some participants, but it's not clear that transferring that directly to other participants would result in a good outcome for the whole system. And in those cases, probably a good option is transfer to the ZSF, because that can help maintain the network moving forward. So that's sort of my perspective.
So I'm going to suggest that given how time is passing at the moment, and as we seem to be going down rabbit holes and multiple updates, can I suggest that we try and get through the updates because we still have ZSAs to go, And if we have time at the end, then we can come back to discussing these sorts of topics. So I'm going to call on people who've got their hands up. But then please let's see if we can get through the updates, because we are now more than an hour into this call, and then if people still want to discuss these topics at the end of the call, then we can come back to them. Strad.
I've got one which I will now postpone to the ZSA update, and then the other one was just a final note on what Nate has said, which is that in addition to anything where there's fees coming out, burning is another candidate for that kind of thing, because it's burning in other protocols is removal from circulation, and ZSF is by definition outside circulation. So that's another candidate for that kind of thing.
Really?
Yeah, so with regards to the PR that Kerit has opened on Zebra, that the Sustainability Fund team is dependent on, there was no immediate intent. In fact, there was no intention to merge this at all. It was, at least not in the near future. It was just to ensure that the Kerit team were working in the right direction with Zebra, and that we could see what they were thinking about and just kind of validate their approach. So having said that, we are happy with how it is, and probably you can rely on it remaining that way with quite high confidence. But I suggest you coordinate also with Kerit if you want to make any additions to it, or yeah, you could also write your review or suggest updates to it as well. I think that would work well, and we can review them as a team, like the Zebra team can review them also. And if we do need to have more coordination, maybe we can set up a call with our 3 organizations to coordinate that.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just saying that I marked 748, which is the addition of the ZSF deposit to ZIP 244 as draft, because that can't be merged as is. Okay.
So Tomek, do you have any other update to give, or?
No, that's all from my end. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments anybody wants to make on that topic?
Just the coordination about that pull request. Let's bear in mind that Christmas is coming, so we can do it early. It's better.
Just to say again, I've had no issues whatsoever for now. I was just signaling that there might be some cooperation we might do. I don't think we will need, I don't depend on immediate cooperation for now from anybody, so it's good.
No problem.
Nate, I'm going to lower your hand. It's up to when you want to talk.
Sorry, it looks lowered on my phone, but
okay, let's move on to Frost. I think Conrado's in the hot seat here.
Yeah. So we're still working on adding communication to the Frost demo that we have, adding socket communication. So hopefully that will be finished by next week. There was another round of review on the zip, on the Frost zip, it has been ready for a while, but we're waiting for the security proof that Chelsea was writing. But now resumed its review. There was some comments from there, from Strad, and addressing them, but nothing major, I think. So we're going to work on that. And also on the security proof itself, Chelsea wrote a paper, and she asked me to write a small section about implementation. So I'm doing that, and hopefully we also publish the proof, probably to a print soon. Yeah, and that's it.
Any questions or comments for Conrado? Okay. Next up, ZSAs.
Sorry, I didn't react
sorry.
in time. I did have one. I had a question from someone that actually had asked a question of me, and I hadn't had a chance to catch up on it, which was for the Frost part that is tied into the transparent signatures. Do you know why the library is giving out 65-byte signatures instead of 64? Which apparently the Bitcoin Schnorr defines 64-byte signatures. Is that just an aspect of how the is that because it's hooked into the older like ECDSA style serialization, the SecP one, or sorry, sec.sec.1 or whatever it is, or
So a bit confused about the question. You talk about using Frost with transparent.
So someone had messaged me privately about using the Frost library from ZF, and was seeing that it was for transparent, at least for SecP256K1 signatures, it was producing 65-byte signatures, which suggests that that it might be using the 33-byte point encoding rather than the 32-byte encoding that the Bitcoin Schnorr spec uses.
Yeah. So the multiple. I'd like just to mention that, just to be clear, Zcash Transparent doesn't use Schnorr, right? So you can't use it with Zcash Transparent transactions.
Yep.
But for Bitcoin, where we have Taproot, right, which is use Schnorr, we have the SecP256K1 cipher suite in your implementation, but that's not compatible with Bitcoin Schnorr. Due to it's the same curve, but it's just the format is a bit different. So yeah, the reason why it's 65 bytes is just we're following the NIST standard because it's a NIST curve. The SEC curve. We're following the SEC standard, and it's a byte to the.
I figured that was the case. Thanks.
Yeah. But just out of curiosity, there is a PR that someone opened on our crates to add, the Bitcoin compatible cipher suite, and they're working on it. Someone else found an issue, and they are solving that, which is cool, right? It's cool when contributors get to collaborate. So yeah, there's a PR that should probably be ready at some point early next year, probably, I think. That adds a cipher suite, a Frost cipher suite that's compatible with Bitcoin Schnorr signatures.
I'm going to declare Frost for Bitcoin off topic for this call now. Again, in the interest
this is not a question. This is not a question about Frost for Bitcoin.
Okay, go ahead, Darren.
Do you know if the NIST format signatures are variable length, or are they always 65 bytes?
They are variable length. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's a poor design. Okay, carry on.
Okay. Any other questions relating to Frost for Zcash? Okay, thank you, Conrado. Let's move on to ZSAs. And I don't know if it's Jonathan or Vivek who want to start us off there.
Yeah, I think I'll start off. So as I think as to start off with the zips, I think we mentioned last time that the zips for the ZSA protocol on Orchard have been mostly stable, and I think they are mostly ready to merge at the moment. So that's I think mostly the same as last month. So we've also continued working with the Zcash Foundation, and there's progress on the Zebra front, as I think it came up earlier in the call. So we've added some initial version 6 transaction support, and I think the specific PR that was mentioned is PR 7978, which I'll add a link to later on. So we also need to set up a testing framework for Zebra V6 transactions. So we've been building an external tool to generate these V6 transactions to test on Zebra. I think we've also recently been discussing our additions to the Halo crate with folks at ECC and stuff about to get things more in line for merging. So that's work that we've been doing. And yeah, there were changes to the issuance authorization signature that I've been working on. So those are, like, we've made some progress on that as well. And hopefully it'll be ready from our end shortly. This is all regarding the ZSA protocol. And so regarding the atomic swaps proposal, we've presented like our progress on that front to ECC. And I think like we were like some of the discussion was based on like whether circuit changes would be necessary. And I think at present, it seems that no circuit changes are required on top of like the circuit changes that are already there for ZSAs. So that's nice. Yeah, again, like hat tip that, I mean, a pointer to the discussion that we are having on atomic swap. So everyone is free to comment on that if they have comments. I will add a link to that as well. I'll just hand it over to John now, I think, for the next bit of the update.
Thanks. So in parallel to those efforts, we're trying to see if we have a role to play in making ZSAs and broadly the Zcash asset robust to the outside attacks, talking about delisting and things like this. I don't know if you're familiar with this. There's a conversation on the aftermath of the Binance interaction with the United States, and somehow the fallout of this is that there's requests to get more clarity on users that are sending funds to Binance, what the source of funds is, and how to identify assets coming to Binance. I think I'm not summarizing well the conversation here. There's a lot of there's a really long thread about it, but my point is that we think that we've proposed in the past on the roadmap of ZSA to have a development on figuring out how to work with exchanges better and standardize what goes on in the node when people need to find a way to show the exchange that they're linked to the transaction, and find a way to do like consent-based identity linking to a transaction if you choose to, so that the exchange can verify who you are. And that was a proposal that we put on the table back before. So at the same time as we worked on asset swap, and it was scheduled to start in 2024, sometime middle 2024. So I think we're going to be looking at proposing to advance those features and try to see if we can help address this the interaction with exchanges already now. Like just start working on those on a proposal to address these things earlier. So it's not concrete. It's only starting, but we have a few ideas on what can be done. We suggested them in the past, but now it's becoming apparently a bit more urgent. I'm gonna pause here, ask Dara, and I have more to say about it.
Okay, so my understanding from reading the thread is that the proposal is kind of an exchange-only address type, which is like a T address, but you can't send to it from a shielded address. So you have to send to it in a transparent-only transaction. What's to stop you in that case just generating a random T address sending your shielded funds to that and sending from that to the exchange address. Is it just that that's no longer Binance's problem because the immediate transaction sending to them is transparent only?
Right. So I read that proposal the same as you. What we're suggesting, at least in ZSA, is way more advanced than adding a hop of transparent address to the transactions. It's actually being able to demonstrate that you have some form of identity in the like one-way identity, right, in the nodes, and then going to the exchanges and interacting with them, demonstrating that you have committed to that address yourself, and you're standing behind that address. It's not like basically forcing you to in front of the exchange, not be anonymous on a particular address. So
where is that idea coming from? Is that just Kedit's proposal, but what is the regulatory requirement that has led to, for example, Firo adding these exchange-only addresses?
We're talking about two different things. What you're describing is I started from there because it's a long thread that discusses it with Binance, and I started there pointing the need, but we're suggesting for ZSA to do something that is more involved than this one hop mega transparent address. How do you call it, Dodger?
Exchange only. So I'm slightly confused. I haven't read the whole thread, but
what I'm talking about is not present in the thread. It's a proposal.
No, I understand that, but I kind of think that we need to have a very clear understanding of what the regulatory requirement is, and not include anything that goes further in reducing privacy than what is actually required to keep the exchange support, because the goal is just to keep the exchange support, if I understand correctly.
Okay, so I'll be more. I'll try to sharpen this. The Binance conversation is a symptom as far as I'm seeing it. They're currently under pressure and trying to figure out the way out of it for all assets, and Zcash is just one of them. But I really believe that if we want to have a robust ecosystem with all of the, in particular with the ZSAs that we're putting forward, at some point there's going to be dollars flowing on those networks, and when dollars are starting to flow, the pressure is going to be not indirect but very direct on the ecosystem. So I think it's a good time to look faster at how do we address how do we keep the control on the consent for the user, so that they can decide when they interact with exchanges to reveal whatever the exchange is asking. Anyway, they're doing it, right? This is when you're working with regulated exchanges, you're already in a context of revealing things and losing your privacy.
Understood.
And so we want to shield ourselves from having mechanisms that are all over the place when we can concentrate them on the interaction with the exchange. But that exchange does need to have, for its compliance, strong assurances on who's holding the assets and possibly where did they come from. And that require features that are just not present not in Zcash, not in ZSA, and not in the ecosystem. And we want accelerate thinking about those features now.
I mean, if the exchange only gives out a deposit address to one customer who has been KYC'd, then is that not sufficient? Do they not trust the customer not to give out the deposit address more widely?
I think, Dara, that you're asking questions that nobody on this call is in a position to answer.
No, I understand that. I want us to clarify what the requirements actually are, but I'll yield to Chris.
I was just going to also ask, in what respect does something like sharing an OVK not satisfy this requirement? If it is a well-defined requirement to begin with, you know, if you have a regime that is demanding some kind of visibility, that's kind of what viewing keys are for. And viewing keys can be specific to, you know, individual, you know, accounts within a shielded wallet.
Yeah.
So, you know,
or a payment disclosure for the particular transfers to the exchange.
Yeah. So the you know, I think that the threat that regulators would likely like to make is that, well, if there's anything that we can't see about the source of your funds, then they're disallowed. But that you know, that threat is just essentially an unsupported demand for full transparency of the whole chain. So I don't think that we can start there.
I think the right place for this particular discussion is that thread, is that topic on the forums about this. I think there's nobody on this call who has been in those discussions with Binance. So I think the right place is there. One thing I will say from personal experience of talking to regulated entities in my previous role at ECC is that the hurdle of being forced to introduce more or expend more engineering efforts and introduce more technical infrastructure can be a factor that will dissuade, for example, an exchange from doing that work in order to continue to support an asset.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're trying to think of ways that keep the core shielding and privacy for anyone that doesn't wish to lose it, and I'm spending a lot of time and energy trying to figure out what can we get away with interacting with law enforcement and interacting with like active investigations that are looking at problematic transactions. I think the compliance of exchanges is the first place we meet those things. The impact is huge because if we do get delisted, it's not good. But we can solve this and remove a lot of future heat on the ecosystem by looking at like proactively introducing things that put us on the good side without losing without making everything transparent. And it's something that we're putting efforts trying to come up with those solutions. There's obvious first steps such as standardizing what goes on in a note, which you fully control as a user, and you disclose if you want. That we already think we should start implementing. So the concrete thing I'm saying here is that we're going to be trying to see if we can help in this topic, but we also have things that for ZSA could be we already proposed that we think could be implemented faster than middle of 2024.
Does anyone know if the settlement with Binance was public? I'm trying to find it.
I don't think you'll have like the logical chain of what it means for our conversation with Zcash from a public source.
Okay, so the FinCEN consent order is public. Yeah, that's on the FinCEN site. I'll put it in the chat.
Anyone that has ideas and opinions on this, we like I want to like dedicate what time is left before the holidays to know at least who's got ideas on the topic, because we're actively like researching this. Yeah, I don't know. You sent a scary FinCEN PDF.
Yeah, it seems to be focused on suspicious activity reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And KYC.
Right.
Yeah.
So
one thing I'll say about regulations and you know things like that consent order is they are not technical requirements. They aren't a set of technical requirements that you can simply lift and put. There is yeah, it's a lot more to this than just being able to say that, you know, is this a binary requirement that we can fulfill?
I invite people to go on YouTube to the ZK Proof channel and go to the live tab. On November 30, we had ZK Proof policy in Washington, DC. And I invited the IRS CI person that investigates like crime in digital assets. And on that panel, I asked him directly, okay, you can't see anything on like private chains, but that's by design. Which part of that is making your life complicated to do law enforcement? And do you understand the need for privacy for us civilians against mass surveillance? And it was like a direct conversation with trying to see if there's any way to do gestures that help when there's like an extreme case that's needed, without relinquishing the core of the privacy that we worked so hard to achieve. So that was a whole event dedicated to the balance between like privacy and law enforcement. So when I'm saying we're putting efforts in this is like this is something that we really take strongly, because we see the benefits of shielded assets being deployed for the world, but we can immediately and directly see misuses that we would like as much as we can to avoid. And so that's why you're going to be hearing me as now trying to figure out what's the right implementation, not just to get away with like a Binance ask, but to make sure that we send a signal to bad actors that this you cannot use with like total freedom from law enforcement, all of the techniques.
Can you link that YouTube discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't find it on zkproof.org.
Yes. Just a second. I'm apologizing in advance. I was the one responsible for the streaming of it, and I was running the panel, which means that you can hear the voice, but you cannot really. You see us moving really slowly. So no, if you Google for zkproof YouTube channel, you get the channel of I'll link it.
I can link the morning session of like that specific policy event.
It's actually the afternoon. It's the afternoon session, but I'll
okay.
It's the end of the afternoon. I'll link it here. It's okay. Here, there you go. The whole day was really interesting with Justin Thaler describing some cryptography and Eran Tromer describing some work he's doing on compliance. There was a demo on MPC.
Did you send that link to everyone? Because I know the Zoom chat just randomly chooses who to send each message to. I don't know why it does that.
I think it's sent.
Thank you.
I think it's sent.
Yeah,
I was deliberately in that work in that conference. I was deliberately trying to be controversial to the people on the other side that are represent law enforcement, but also float some possible solutions and see what is what's their take. So the session I'm talking about is the last session. It's the panel.
Thank you.
So that's for now. Again, I'm interested in gathering all of everyone's opinions on this. It's a important topic.
Yeah, I think it's a topic that we need to think about in a practical sense. On the one hand, obviously we don't want to be seen to be bowing to, or we don't want to bow to pressure. On the other hand, if adoption of Zcash becomes massively obstructed, then that also conflicts with all our goals. Darren.
Yeah, so it seems to be that so regulators have this instinct that in order to have better compliance, you need to force transparent usage of the blockchain, but actually that reveals the information to everyone, not just to the regulators. And in fact, if say you were to pay to a shielded exchange address, then you could include a memo which could include everything needed for the travel rule. So yeah, it's not clear that transparency is the actual.
I'm voting for that one. That's what I'm saying. I think we should instead of trying to wiggle our way with some half-baked transparency stuff, we should probably do it proper and show other privacy applications how this should be done for real. This came right after the Digital Dollar Project conference, where there's 250 people that assembled in DC to talk about what the dollar would look like, and they all were saying the same thing: we need zero knowledge proofs for privacy. And basically, that's already established. So we need to show them how it's done. it's not by transparency.
Agreed.
And
And in fact, transparent transactions should be ruled out, just for regulatory compliance reasons, because they reveal information to people who shouldn't have it.
I think
Which
Europe
is a
is going.
regulatory issue.
I think Europe will be going that direction. By the way, I'm pretty certain that at some point they'll outlaw like regular unshielded money transfers.
Another kind of side question this raises is it reasonable for a Zcash user like Binance to want to be able to control how they receive funds? So, you know, they, I think if Binance could, they would tomorrow, you know, flick a switch or set an option in their Zcash that would allow them to refuse to accept transactions from a shielded address.
And for the reason I pointed out, it would do them no good, because people would just use one-off random T addresses to bypass it.
Not going to argue with that, but the question still stands: is it reasonable for them to want to do that, or should people who are supporting Zcash accept that this is the way it works? It's intended to be private and shielded, and if you don't like that, then, you know, tough. In which case, then the implicit, you know, response, the expected response from someone like Binance would be to say, right, well, sorry, but we're not gonna support Zcash anymore.
I mean, we can also remember that regulated exchanges in the United States do support Zcash and support transfers both from and to shielded addresses. And so this is Binance not wanting to do extended due diligence.
Yeah.
What do you mean by extended due diligence? I might have misunderstood.
This is the additional KYC steps that, for example, you know, Gemini and Coinbase and other regulated U.S. exchanges take to identify their users.
Yeah, and that often is a purely commercial decision because of the extra cost that's involved in doing extended due diligence. If they aren't seeing enough revenue from a specific coin that they are incurring extra costs in extended due diligence and to support, then that becomes that will often become a very simple commercial decision.
There's an option to do extended due diligence on the Zcash blockchain. Like most people use Chainalysis to do some due diligence. But
no, John, they're no. This is doing more than just gathering the simple KYC information. This is a non-technical concept of doing further investigation, asking the person where they're receiving the funds from, and they provide proof of where the funds are from, or
the thing is that when you ask those questions, you often have a need to have like unbiased outside sources to recoup the answers that you're getting, like to cross examine, you know, the answers that you're getting. And when everything is unattributed and completely private, it makes it very difficult for those due diligences to achieve that.
I mean, customers have the right to privacy. So if they were paying, if I pay a merchant in cash, the merchant can't ask me where that cash came from. I know there are restrictions on sort of moving cash across borders, things like that. But either you accept the principle that privacy includes financial privacy, or you don't. And it seems like the regulators don't, and that's the underlying problem.
If you so the exchanges are regulated as money transmitters, and I've never done this personally, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that if I were to show up at the office of a bank or a similarly or a money transmitter or a similarly regulated organization with $20,000 in cash, they would want to conduct a fair amount of privacy piercing due diligence on me before they would accept those funds.
So I've actually done it for years, and my brother is doing it at Bits of Gold in Israel. Not going with dollars, but like being on the other side, receiving just Bitcoins, right, and Ethereums and other assets. You have the tools that kind of de-anonymize using Chainalysis, which is unfortunate that it exists, but it exists. But you also ask questions of source of funds, and you look at people in the eyes, try to figure out if they're bullshitting you or not, because you have to do it, because there's a certain percentage of users that are actually coming with illegitimate funds, and you need to catch them, and also because the regulator is forcing you to do it. But my point is that we need to at least have some form of tools that would deter those that think that they can, that because every transaction is completely unattributed, they can use that to just say, well, I can't prove to you anything, so I won't tell you the source of funds, and you have to trust that it's legit. When it comes to due diligence, it becomes difficult. I think that's why like exchanges have difficulties doing those due diligence, but law enforcement have much more difficulties. That's the real target.
But I mean, where the funds came from in a high level sense, what did you do in order to get that money, is an entirely different, it's a different kind of question than what address did the money come from. So,
Yeah.
and you don't need to answer the latter in order to answer the former.
No, I agree, and as I'm saying, I think there's tools that will allow to show that when a VASP like an exchange is asking for like trying to establish clearance, you might be able to have to show that it left another exchange, it saw everything, it made a few hops, and now I'm presenting it to you, and those hops never traveled through the currently under investigation 100 I don't know, terrorist list or something like that. Like that's something that is doesn't disclose too much of privacy to anyone.
I mean, it discloses a lot.
Okay, as with the previous as with our previous discussions during this call, we've been on here now for an hour and 47 minutes, and I have to say that I do not think we are going to resolve this issue
No,
on this call.
No, but happy to take it offline and discuss it, because it's again, I want all of the ideas.
I think those of you who have questions regarding the Binance thing, like I said, nobody on this call has been involved in those discussions with Binance. The right place would be to post into that thread on the forums. Okay, right. We are over time, so let's just check if there's any more questions or announcements that anybody wants to share or raise. If not, we'll skip the open discussion, as I think we've kind of had that already during all of the updates. And we will say goodbye and go on, Nate.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, because there were a lot of topics people wanted to dig deeply into. I'm wondering if we should have another meeting, or if we should like start scheduling an agenda for the open discussions, like here are a set of topics people want to dive into, so we can have an open discussion that's fully focused on X or Y. Because I feel like there were 4 or 5 topics like that this call where people seem to want to keep digging into it. Maybe that could be a smaller group. I don't know. I'm just wondering how we can scratch people's itches for
So
digging
if
in.
there are specific topics that people want to discuss, email arboristcall@cfnd.org and let us know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Right, we're going to take a break over the holiday period, and our next call will be on the 11th of January in this earlier time slot of 3 p.m. UTC. So happy holidays to everybody. And oh yeah, just to let everybody know that the Light Client Working Group call is later today, and there's also a community call with the candidates who are standing for election to the Zcash Community Grants Committee later today as well. So with that, let's wrap it up, and everybody have a good holiday, and we'll see you all in approximately 4 weeks' time.
See you. Thanks.
Bye. Cheerio.
Bye all.